Now, in 2025, there is a law unanimously adopted, giving Mali's coup leader, General Assimi Goïta, a 5-year term of office, renewable indefinitely without recourse to an election. Now, the excuse for stability. The law specifies that the mandate could last until the conditions for a transparent and peaceful election are met. Now, the twist is only members of the government, that's the CNT, and the transitional president will be able to stand for office in future elections. All references to political parties have also been removed. Assimi Goïta is now firmly established as a head of state until at least 2030 with a tailor-made legal legitimacy. This is a man who had originally pledged to return the country to democratic rule in 18 months. Now, is there a redefining of what governance is, a shifting away from democracy? Will dictatorship wear a new cloak in the coming years, becoming accepted as the new norm? Where are we headed? How should Africa be reacting to this persistent authoritarian entrenchment? Now, joining us to speak on this, we have Ademola Oshodi. He's an African Affairs analyst. We also have Daniel Eizenga, PhD, a research fellow, Africa Center for Strategic Studies, National Defense University, and also Daron Bartlett is a journalist in Kampala, Uganda. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us at this time. So let me begin with you, Ademola. Ademola, Mali has effectively suspended these elections until further notice. How do you assess the impact of this on Mali's democratic trajectory, especially when it comes to sidelining democratic processes in favor of an open-ended rule?
Thank you. This doesn't bode well for Mali. It doesn't bode well for the Sahel states, the ones that have left ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, and formed their own alliance of Sahel states. And it doesn't bode well for West Africa itself. Military rule is outdated. It's no longer cool. President Buhari of Nigeria just died 2 days ago. And he was a military ruler, and he truncated democracy in 1983. But God helped him. He had the opportunity to redeem himself to be a true Democrat when he came back in 2015. Military rule is no longer cool in Africa or anywhere in the world, even in Myanmar, Burma. What we see in Mali now is a path towards further instability in that already impoverished, unstable West African state. This will give a lot of impetus and inspiration for other military men, other people, soldiers, to take action against the government. This is what is called a good justification, to say we are seeking democracy and we want the government to recognize the democratic path for the country. This is what would justify, apart from the insecurities of the insurgency and people in the Aswad region of Mali seeking sort of autonomy or independence. This will additional fire to the current instability and unsettled political situation in Mali. It's just bad all around.
Absolutely. Now, let's hear from Daniel, if he agrees with you. Ademola did say that military rule is no longer cool in Africa. And since we actually have political parties in Mali being dissolved and civil space, shut down, can we still talk about a transition, or would you say that Mali has quietly slid into full authoritarianism?
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. What we're looking at is really the entrenchment of military power and military rule in Mali. And so, no, I don't think it makes sense to talk about this as a transition any longer. Assimi Goïta and the other colonels around him staged their military coup in August of 2020. So they're coming up on being in power for almost 5 years and next month. And now they have orchestrated, a legal justification for their remaining in power for the next 5 years. That'll be 10 years of military rule. So no, that doesn't sound like a transition to me at all. I don't think we can talk about any kind of democratization process or democracy in Mali. This is handpicked representatives of the junta supporting the further entrenchment of military rule in Mali. And I think that it's apparent when you think about how they framed it, that they're going to wait for stability to return, for peace to come to Mali before they hold elections. Well, if you look at the last 5 years and what's happened in Mali since they took power, there's really no indication that we should expect stability and peace anytime in the near term, so long as they remain in power. We've seen the number of violent events and the number of deaths related to those violent events more than triple since the junta took power in 2020. We've seen the economy come to a halt. We've seen human rights abuses across the entire country, where we've had more than 500 people massacred by the military and their Russian mercenary counterparts. So, I think the idea that the junta is working towards the interests of Malian citizens to restore stability is really not borne out in the evidence of what they've done since they've been in power. And I don't think that there's any credible way of framing this as a transition. This is very much a military regime in Mali.
Okay, now let's hear from Daron. Daron, this mandate was, blamed on instability, and the justification for postponing the elections is security. But, people have actually, most quarters have actually said that jihadist attacks have not reduced under the military rule. So what evidence is there that extending this mandate will improve security?
I think the intention from the beginning, it must be very clear, because I have seen governments that have been taken over through military rule. In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni captured power in 1986. He had 5 to 6 years of military rule at that time, appointed people who worked around him and formed a council, and eventually a government was formed. You've seen the same in Rwanda when Paul Kagame and his counterparts came to power through military rule by, fighting the genocide, yes, but they stayed for some time because it was a military rule. We've seen Muammar Gaddafi, we've seen Saddam Hussein do the same. So the thing is that there's a same playbook that most times when they come, they're going to ask for some time to kind of build a system. Now, most of them have transitioned to democratic countries, but at the end of the day, they still stay because then they take on as presidents. Does that solve the military issues in those countries? I think the reason they are giving to say, no, we have jihadists, we have maybe rebel activities. There was an attempted coup even when Assimi came to power. That, for me, doesn't hold water, even when it has some little substance in it. But again, there are case studies on the African continent where military governments have come into power, established a government, put a democratic system, but still went on to fight the jihadists or other rebel groups that are available. We saw when you run up to Central African Republic when Museveni came over to power. We saw Lakwenaran and all these Maus and Majmadis rebellions that have been around. They established a government, and then later on, those systems managed to go and fight the Islamists, the maybe jihadists, the rebel groups. So it's just an excuse. And I commented on this a few days ago and said, look, twice he commits a coup, he comes to power, goes and then does it again, and then he puts conditions of his extending a military rule to 30 years, but it's renewable. The moment you see words such as renewable, they are as good as removing term limits in the constitution, where I've seen presidents do this many times, and they stay in power. So I don't see democracy come to the country because that's an excuse. And if it came, he will still be the guy who will be elected as the president for the country. We want it or not. We've seen the history of Mali, where they have been in coup after coup after coup, and whoever comes through a coup many times lives by the coup. So I think we're here to see Mali stay in this situation for another long time, because this is the same playbook that we've seen in Central Africa, in West Africa. I think it's only southern part of Africa that has not had such issues there. So it's a playbook. We see this, and he will become a dictator eventually. This is just my prediction because I've seen history repeat itself.
Well, Daron, you did say that you don't see democracy, coming to stay. Would you say that Malians are even safer today than they were in 2020 before the coup?
I would say that argument is two-folded. There is a side where they will say that a military government came to power and stabilized the country and they are safer. I can give a case study for that. I would say maybe Rwanda. I would say Uganda, that there came a military government that has stayed longer, and I would say that they are safer. There are no, apart from ADF rebel groups here in a few pockets here and there. But now the Malians have a reason to worry. The moment, like I said, the moment a clause said renewable, like the term for the president is renewable, of the junta government, you just know that that is democracy. It's just like a candle in the wind. And I don't see that happen. But there's the most important thing. What are the pain points of the Malians? If the pain points are security, and the government that has come in power is able to provide security, if the pain points of the government is a better economy and it's able to provide an economy that is suitable, if the pain points of the Malians is jobs and the government that has come to power through military action is able to provide the jobs, then we may start to have a different argument that you have a dictatorship that works. But with the way we have seen it happen, with the way governments change hands in Mali, twice what Assimi has done in 2020, again, when he first made his first coup and then the second coup, and the way the rule is going, I think that they should brace themselves for a military rule for as long as it will exist, because I know in my prediction and from the research that I read sometime from the U.S. Institute of Peace, where they put up a report on why Mali is destabilized today, you can just see a repeated behavior, and probably that's what they are going to be for a very long time.
All right. Now, let's come back to you, Ademola. Daron said, they should brace up for military rule. Now, let's touch a bit about ECOWAS, because ECOWAS has lost Mali, Niger, and also Burkina Faso in under 2 years. Now, would you say that this regional bloc, has lost its credibility as a guarantor of democracy?
Definitely not. ECOWAS cannot be defined in the past 2 years. ECOWAS should be defined in the 50 years of its existence. ECOWAS has brought tremendous stability and impact, economically in the subcontinent of West Africa. We can talk about ECOWAS' role in Liberia, in Syria alone, and indeed, in many cases, even in the Gambia, restoring and ensuring democracy is actually, put in place and, stays in place. We can talk about ECOWAS and it's the economic integration of parts of West Africa, though it's still budding, but it's still definitely a bigger impact than it's not existing. We can talk about ECOWAS and its cooperation with the European Union, with immigration, and with the Americans and security. So it should not be defined in the past 2 years. ECOWAS, it's working behind the scene to ensure that democracy is still restored in those countries. I would say those rebellious countries, though they've left ECOWAS, and also to ensure that it still flourishes and in existing democratic governments in West Africa. Going again, without sounding a little too flattering, ECOWAS is probably the most successful actually is the most successful regional body in Africa. It definitely has more impact than the Eastern African Union or the SADC in Southern Africa, or even the Maghreb Union in the north. So it is going through its challenges right now, and we should recognize that. But it's the essence of it. The essence of it's the bringing economic union, bringing the people together, ensuring that security is as much put in place. I won't say guaranteed, and ensuring that the countries of this subcontinent, with a lot of history, I would say, most of them French, and a big part of the English, including Nigeria and Ghana, work together educationally. We got educational initiatives, security, and in many cases even in climate change. So this political upheaval in Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger, not to talk of Guinea, even though Guinea is still an ECOWAS nation, should not be seen as a failure of the Union. It should be seen as an aberration in the past 2 years that is something that can easily be corrected. We've seen countries around the world, go through their trying moments, even in West Africa, and we'll see them come back flourishing. Look at Liberia, look at Sierra Leone, the stability. Ghana went through its own challenges with in the 80s with Jerry Rawlings, and it's now the poster child for democracy in Africa, not just West Africa. So I think we should be a little bit not hesitant in talking about the failure or even the issues of West Africa, ECOWAS.
Well, let's hope that that aberration, as you say, is being corrected, is corrected soon enough. Now, let's come back to you, Daniel. Daniel, the new law in Mali, allows an indefinitely renewable term and concentrates power entirely in the presidency. How concerning is this, especially for constitutional scholars and democracy advocates?
I think it formalizes exactly what the risks are when you have a military coup, and that's that the military takes power not by some sort of a legitimacy placed in it by the population. The military takes power through force, and this is an unconstitutional change of government. They worked very quickly to suspend the Constitution, to dismiss the government, and to dismiss the National Assembly when they took power. And now, over the course of 5 years of transition and window dressing around a political transition and promises that were unkept to return power to civilian rule, Assimi Goïta and his junta have formalized what they have always intended, which is to remain in power as long as they can. And I think that you also see with the abolishment of political parties that they're making it plain for everyone to see that power rests in the military, it rests in the executive, and there are no guaranteed political rights to citizens or civil liberties for citizens. It's all determined by the junta, by the junta. And I think that that's extremely worrying. It should be worrying to all the citizens of Mali. It should be worrying to countries around Mali in West Africa and beyond, that this very aggressive form of anti-constitutionalism can take root in a country that not long ago was seen as on a straight and strong path to democratization. That's all been disrupted by this military coup in 2020 and Assimi Goïta's second intervention to further strengthen his hand in 2021. Here we are almost 5 years later, and the military has really just completely taken control, and now there's very little to anything at all that stands in the way of them remaining in power.
All right. Now, Daron, earlier you talked about, them a playbook, and some analysts have actually said that, this is the Burundian playbook all over again, stay in power long enough and rewrite the rules. Now, aside that, human rights groups, have actually accused the Wagner forces and also Goïta of abuses. What role do you think that the Wagner group and the other Russian actors are playing in emboldening these regimes to defy ECOWAS and also international norms?
Well, that is quite deep a question. I don't know how far I can go with it, but I'll try to make it simpler. You see, the Wagner group is across Africa, from the West Africa to DRC, and they do the same thing. They are very clean on what they do. One is that preach that the other option that you've had, which was France and the West, are the bad people. We are the good people. The other people are the ones who are bringing insecurity. They are stealing your minerals, and we are here to protect you, protect your interests, and see that you're in power. And also, that kind of gospel is one that will always stick in the minds of the West Africans. If you look at Mali, Burkina Faso, and all the countries that are experiencing the same experience. We've seen Traoré from Burkina Faso go meet the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, giving him military aid and all these things to protect themselves in power. And that is the huge influence that they have over most African countries that they are working with. Now, human rights activists or reports are right on all fronts of that. But sometimes there's also context to this, that as a poor nation, who would you rather run to who's going to save you from the most important issues that you're facing as a country? Would you rather go to the West and get loans and hand over your minerals? Or would you rather you come to us and we provide you with security to splash out the jihadists so that you can retain your seats in power? So that question is a very interesting one when it's placed before these leaders. At least I have been privileged to sit in a conference where people are discussing security matters, and such questions always come up. And most leaders and politicians focus on one thing. If we have security, we are able to attain any other achievements as a country. So that is the gospel that is always preached to even these leaders. And that influence is huge. So what is going to happen? Goïta, Traoré, and the others in Guinea are going to sit down and say, I think we deserve security more because we've been destabilized for a long time. So let us take on the Wagner group to come into the countries and help us stabilize the security issues in the northern part of Mali and others, so that we can then be able to become productive and create jobs and do farming and do any other activity that is going to make the economy better. But the most important thing is they forget that in the future, there is a catch, and the catch is going to be one that is very diplomatic. It is just a skin peeling off its own, a snake peeling off its own skin, and eventually it will turn out to be a different one. When Russia needs help in minerals, it will come, that point will come. But let's deal with what is there today. And these West African leaders are looking at the biggest problem they have today, which is the jihadists and rebel groups, destabilization, security matters. And then after we solve that, and the only partner you're going to have today who's trying to provide this to you is the Russian, who's giving the Wagner group. Now, once that is done, they will be just entering another phase of a development of a country. Either it will be progressive or it will be regressive. That will also be there because you just never know.
Okay.
There could rise another coup, and that coup will come with another agenda. And then there will be the West, and there will also be Putin to come in and say, who do I work with? Do I stay with Assimi, or do I now go who has done another coup? It's just a history of Mali, coup after coup after coup, 2012. You can go back up to the 70s. It's just the same thing, 1991. Same playbook. So the human rights activities could be right, but there are bigger pains in the country than just human rights.
All right. So let's hear if Ademola has something else to say on this, about Russia and the Wagner group, emboldening these countries.
I believe their incursion into West Africa, even in Africa generally, because they do have presence in Central and East Africa. I think it's just symptoms of the weak structures we have, the weak governance in Africa, and the governments that have stayed longer in power, or governments that have truncated democratic rule, opening up access to foreign intervention with the Russians. But I look at the Wagner Group, and I look at it as just an extension of the Russian government, of Vladimir Putin. He's going through his own crisis in Ukraine, and there's no way he's going to come out ahead of that. So I believe once he loses out in the power game in Russia with his not achieving his objective in Ukraine, the Wagner Group itself will be more shaken. But we have a vacuum from Western powers. The Americans have been kicked out of West Africa, in at least their boots are no longer on ground. So of the French and the Germans and anybody else that were there, either overtly or covertly. So we see the Wagner Group as filling up that vacuum. It's not sustainable because they do not achieve what they were brought there for. They're not achieving security or stability. There's a lot of human rights abuses been happening there, and the countries, the people are not anywhere better. There are security issues, deaths, poverty. So eventually, this is what I predict. Another national of each, where the Wagner Group is being hosted, another national will come up and rise up against the government and challenge the status quo, because the results will speak for itself. It'll be evidential. What has the Wagner Group done to change events? Okay, you kicked out the French in Niger, you kicked out the French in Mali, and is our lot better off? And the answer is no. So it's the Wagner Group are on a very shaky ground, and I think we should just wait and see. We all wish for stability and prosperity in West Africa and Africa in itself. And as much as we do not want foreign intervention, especially whether Western or Eastern forces. It's important that the African governments, African people, ensure we build strong institutions. Strong institutions is what's going to save us, not strong men, as Obama once said. I think it's just we should just hold our breath and see how things map out in Russia. Map out in Russia and map out also on the ground in the countries where the Wagner Group, or I think they're called the African Core now, have been hosted in Africa. I think it's a wait and see moment. It's sad because it's not that I'm wishing bad or I'm wishing more upheaval for Africa, but I really don't see them being successful in their foray on the continent at the moment.
Okay, now let's wind down and ask Daniel the last question. Daniel, especially with most political opposition silenced or even exiled, what chances are left for peaceful resistance or democratic reform from inside the country?
I think that's probably the most important question, as we realize that they've just been completely suppressed. I think increasingly now Malians are going to come to face with the reality that they are living under a military regime that is bent on staying in power. As there are fewer and fewer ways for them to voice their dissent and opposition to that form of government, I think the situation will also continue to get worse, with the security situation deteriorating, human rights abuses increasing, jihadist insurgents attacking closer and closer to Bamako, capital of Mali, more and more territory under this kind of violence, I think you're going to see more and more desire on the part of Malian citizens to mobilize, to voice their views that their interests, their security are not being met by the military in power. And so, while the military has very quickly worked to abolish parties, target civil society leaders, arrest, detain critics, I think that you might see a broader movement among the population start to mobilize to express their frustrations and grievances.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll have to wrap up this segment. But thank you so much, Ademola Oshodi, African Affairs Analyst, Daniel Eizenga, PhD, Research Fellow, Africa Center for Strategic Studies, National Defense University, and Daron Bartlett, a journalist in Kampala, Uganda. We appreciate you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.